Welcome to our episode of Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. Presented by Bible Interact and hosted by Dr. George Sparks. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of the Bible from leading experts in the field of archaeology.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. David Graves, an experienced biblical archaeologist and CEO of Electronic Christian Media. I'm here today with another exciting episode on our Archaeology Discoveries channel, where we discuss important archaeological artifacts related to the Bible. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe to our channel.
Good morning, good evening, good day to everybody out there. This is Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down, sponsored by Bible Interact. My name is George Sparks. My special guest is Dr. David Graves, received his PhD from Aberdeen University in Scotland. He has over 30 years experience in the Near East, excavating at sites like Shiloh and Tel El Makartar, and also Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were excavated, and Tel El Hammam, one of the biblical candidates for Sodom. Today we're going to talk about Shalmaneser V from the Persian period. And this is once again going to be interesting for all you Bible students out there and enthusiasts. So stay tuned, because he's always very informative with his amazing PowerPoints. Dr. Graves, welcome to the program.
Well, welcome, George. Good to be with you. Just for the keeners out there that might have picked it up, we're talking about the Assyrian period, not Persian. So just
okay.
We did the Persian period for the last number of weeks, so we're jumping back in time, back in time a little further back, talking about the Assyrian kings and some of the descendants of Shalmaneser III, or Tiglath-Pileser III was his father.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that today.
So there we go. This is what happens when you assume. I assumed we were still going to be in Persia, no matter what, no matter what name. So here I am, early in the morning. I did have my coffee and caffeine, but I'm going to have some more. And always appreciate the corrections. What the heck?
Well,
hey, there we go. Now, man, why did you have that slide up to begin with, Doctor? I went to Shalmaneser V.
Yep, Shalmaneser the Fifth. So we're going to look
Invades
at this.
Israel. Now, okay, I ain't going to give anything away. I'm not going to ask you questions until after your presentation.
All right. Well,
I'll just go ahead and put my foot in my mouth again if I do that.
So
that's the way to start a podcast.
This is
just to let people know. I'm sorry, Doctor. Go ahead.
Just a depiction of one of the, my idea of the depiction of one of the reliefs in the British Museum.
Your PowerPoints and slides are fantastic.
Shalmaneser V, and we're going to talk about one of his annals. And this is the Assyrian kings list on the right-hand side. It lists all of the Assyrian kings and all of their campaigns and victories and so forth, their accomplishments. It's based on my book on the Biblical Archaeology of Biblical People. And
once again, I had this one right here.
That's right. And there's some similar material in that one as well. You'll find the footnotes and references.
Before you take off, Doctor, I don't want to be rude, but I do want to promote your books. Even if this is the second edition, it is got wonderful illustrations in it.
Yeah, very similar to all of my books. I graphs, images, and references. So anybody doing research.
Got archaeological digs. They're not expensive. I got a large selection of them, but you've published more than 30 books, so that in itself is quite the encyclopedia collection.
Yes, I'm up to 40 right now, actually. And
how many?
just 40. I've got 3 coloring books that I've just recently done for the kids so they can get involved in archaeology as well. And so here are a few of the images, black and white coloring images for children ages 4 to 14, or even some adults like to get into the coloring. There's some over 30 plates in each book. And then I did the New Testament one as well, all based on artifacts and archaeological discoveries. So each plate is historically accurate and with an artifact, and there's a little write-up with some facts about each artifact in it as well, written for children ages about 6 and up, so they can understand archaeology, and you can start them off young. And then I'm working on, I should have this one done in a week's time, Archaeology of Biblical People. So I'm just finishing that one up. And again, about 30 different plates for just in time for Christmas. Lots of fun for coloring. Okay, well, now that we're back to our podcast for today, we're going to do a little mini series we started last week or the week before that with the Assyrian kings. And we're going to do 6 of them. We looked at Tiglath-Pileser III, or Pul, and his son was Shalmaneser V. And these are the 6 kings that are all mentioned in the Bible. Here's the genealogy, the family tree, with Shalmaneser being the son of Tiglath-Pileser III. In the blue, this is their wives and their names of their wives. We know that from their annals. And this is a relief from the British Museum, Northwest Palace at Nimrud, where it was discovered, depicting King Tiglath-Pileser III. He's on the right. So here he is here. He's got a spear in his hand, pointing down to one of his enemies. He's got his foot on his neck, indicating that he has taken. And then the crown prince, Ulayu, here on the left. This is Shalmaneser V, also known as Prince Ulayu. Some note that both figures are wearing the royal diadem with 2 bands draping down behind them. You can see them here, 1, 2 draping down. That was their traditional garb. This looks a little bit like the Turkish fez hat, a little pointy top to it, but sort of the Ottoman hat that you see sometimes the Turkish people wearing. This looks like a toque, but it's a crown and has the draping bands behind him. So those are the 2 individuals we find on the Assyrian reliefs, and he's carrying something here. There's a lot of debate by archaeologists as to what this is. It looks a little bit like a purse. It could be a weight. Again, a lot of debate on that. We're not going to settle that today. And there's also another individual here in the back with a fan, probably one of his courtiers from his court, and it's been etched out. Some of this here in the brown color has been rebuilt because it had been worn away or disintegrated over time. So that's one of the reliefs. I said the British Museum. Actually, I think this one might be in the Assyrian Museum. I'd have to check on that again. Here we have the relief, one of the annals, part of the relief here, putting Shalmaneser V on the timeline. We have Tiglath-Pileser III here, about 727 to 722 BC. He only reigned for a short period of time, only 5 years. But it's right at the time period of the fall of Israel in 722. So it's quite historic, quite significant in Israelite history. And book ended by Amos and Hosea and Micah and Isaiah as the prophets of Israel. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, the son of Elah, began to reign in Samaria over Israel, and he reigned 9 years. And he did what was evil in the eyes and the sight of the Lord, yet not as the kings of Israel who were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria. This is who we're talking about today. And Hoshea became his vassal and paid him tribute. And so Hoshea became the king under Shalmaneser of the Assyrians. So the Assyrians were in control of Israel at this time and of the land. And he paid tribute to him, gave him money. Basically, here's some silver, here's some gold. I'll be one of your vassals. I'll be faithful to the Assyrians. Obey them. Just don't invade our land and kill our people and kill me. But verse 4 says, but the king of Assyria found treachery in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, Azarkon IV, king of Egypt, and offered no tribute to the king of Assyria. So basically, Hoshea wanted support from the Egyptians and wanted to be delivered from the Assyrians, reneged on his payments to the Assyrians, and the Assyrians got ticked off by that. And as he had done year by year, basically not paying his money and going after help from the Egyptians. So therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. And then the king of Assyria invaded all the land and came to Samaria, and for 3 years he besieged it. So only ruled for 5 years, but 3 of those years he was fighting against Hoshea in the land of Samaria. And then in the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria, and he carried the Israelites away to Assyria and placed them in Halah and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. We know the Medes and the Persians from our history. So this is the biblical reference to Shalmaneser III. Here is that relief again. You see the cuneiform Assyrian writing on the top describing the events of what took place down below. So this is why we know what's happening in the picture, because we have it written down for us on the text. If we want to put things in a broader perspective, we have the fall of Jerusalem here, 597, 587, but then we have the fall of Israel in 722 right here at the time of Shalmaneser V, the end of his reign. Here is the Assyrian kings list that we're going to talk about a little bit, discovered in Nimrod in 1873 by Austin Henry Layard, the British archaeologist. And this artifact is in the British Museum, written in Akkadian cuneiform. And the significance of this is that it's the first known extra biblical reference of Ahaz, king of Judah, as well. So that's its unique claim to fame, but also mentions Shalmaneser. So the biblical account and the Assyrian reliefs come together in the Assyrian reliefs. In this scene here, painted on the wall of the 8th century Assyrian palace of Hadaratu in Syria, this king Tiglath-Pileser III is seated here on his throne with his staff and a fan, or actually, I think that is one of the cephalum, or it's a rattle that they use for music, possibly, or I'm not sure. Receives a report from the crown prince Elielu. This is the Shalmaneser V. And this reconstruction is now in the Louvre Museum. Here is another one of the tablets, a drawing of it showing the reverse and the obverse sides of the tablet. They wrote on both sides of the tablets. We only usually see one side of them in a museum, but they're often written on both sides. And this is called the Babylonian King's List A letter from the crown prince to his father, Tiglath-Pileser III. They've all been published. You can find the written documents here, because these letters we can read. Anyone that can read cuneiform. This is the palace, remains from the air, excavations on it. There's a close-up of that relief showing the prisoner with his foot on his neck. Here's a golden bowl that once belonged to his wife, Batndu. Beautiful gold bowl from this time period. And here we have some of the bronze lion weights of Shalmaneser V. So we don't have a lot of objects, but here we have the weights that were used for weights and measures. You know, when they get their grain, they could weigh it out. Each had a certain weight. And then here is the Babylonian Chronicle, records Shalmaneser, who ravaged Samaria. That's confirmed in that material that we read earlier from 2 Kings 17, verses 3 to 6. And it's been translated by Grayson, the Assyrian and Babylonian Chronicles, 1975. Grayson is probably one of the most famous accounts that we have of these chronicles. They're the go-to for most scholars, Grayson's translation of them. And it reads, on the 25th of the month of Tabatnu, Shalmaneser in Assyria and Akkad ascended the throne. He ravaged Samaria. The 5th month note Shalmaneser went to his destiny in the month of Tabatnu. For 5 years, Shalmaneser ruled Akkad and Assyria. This is the Asher Charter, an inscription from Sargon II that accuses Shalmaneser V of being punished by the god Asher for not reverting the city of Asher and imposing forced labor on its citizens. This is in the British Museum. So again, we know a lot of the events from the life and the times of these Assyrian kings, and we can relate them to the accounts we find in Scripture. So that's a bit of an overview of this particular king. Only ruled for 5 years, but gives us a good idea of what took place in his reign and a few of the artifacts that are associated with him. All right, George.
Well, thanks very much. I mean, that was short, but really, you know what I thought was interesting was towards the end you mentioned Asher, and it never dawned on me that these Assyrian kings had theophoric names. their god, one of their gods is represented in their names.
Yes.
Just like we might say Hezekiah or Daniel or the word Israel. I should pay attention to that, right?
And they named
It's
some of their
sometimes a clue.
cities.
What's that?
They named some of their cities. There's a city called Asher as well,
Right.
named
So
after their gods that have been excavated. So, yeah, not unlike many Israelites named their children with L in them.
yes, and that comes from Lord Elohim, but we also see some suffix at the end of names representing. Okay, I don't Yahweh. I'll just say it Yahweh because this is academic. And no disrespect, folks. I could say Adonai, but that's not exactly correct. So, and it is in the name. How would you pronounce it back then? Right? It
That's
is
right.
the name.
Yes.
So, like, this was really fascinating. And that there was a number of Assyrian kings mentioned in the biblical narrative. And
Yes.
what else
Yes,
was I listening to the other? Go
I
ahead.
had
I'm sorry.
interaction with them, and so
Yeah.
the history and the wars and the relationships between the different countries of Egypt and Assyria and Babylon and Persia, it squarely places the scriptural accounts in the center of the local history.
Right. And because we have names mentioned, we can pretty much give them accurate dates. I
Yes.
shouldn't say pretty much. We do give them accurate dates. Now, this could be in comparison with the presentation, the podcast. I do recommend it to you, the listening audience. The podcast of the Egyptian pharaohs also mentioned in what I'm going to say the Christian Old Testament. And you followed a number of them as well. I've actually seen a podcast where they weren't very explicit in what they said. So it was very general and might just referring to, in their mind, the time period, the Exodus. They say, why weren't the pharaohs mentioned in the Bible? And I said, well, that's not exactly, to be a little bit snotty. Um, that might be true for the time period which we refer to as the Exodus and the conquest. But that's not accurate throughout the Old Testament scriptural narrative. As you did mention, I don't mean to get off topic, but I do want to bring that up because that's an interesting podcast as well. Whereas you gave the timeline of the Assyrian kings that are mentioned in the scriptural narrative, and we can see right there briefly was Hezekiah. Well, not Hezekiah, but underneath Hezekiah, the Assyrian king that was involved, where Hezekiah, the king of Judah, was preparing the city, such as the broad wall, which we can see today, and also
Right.
extending the tunnel, where we get the Siloam inscription. And we also have these little, where he might be, according to biblical scholars, we find these little stamped handles saying Lamelech, meaning the king, from the time period of Hezekiah, where they're probably collecting taxes and paying people for doing these, you could say, endeavors, such as making the broad wall. And he's paying people for this. And also his military force that is stationed throughout Judea and their city states, such as Gezer and Lachish, which we also read about. Might be going
And
off subject a little bit, but
we showed some of the weights, three
yes.
of the weights from Shalmaneser V, which is kind of interesting because remember he had the king of Samaria had to pay tribute to the Assyrians, and so they would weigh out the gold and the silver, how much they owed them, using those kinds of weights.
Right.
And the king of Samaria reneged on it and went to the Egyptians trying to get help from them. And as a result, the Assyrians got ticked off by that and invaded and took siege. And that's what led to the fall of Jerusalem in 722. So again, those weights actually fit into the biblical narrative, help us understand how wheat and other goods were weighted out.
Right. I think because we look at our culture and we assume everybody had currency and coins, but
Yes.
that's not the case. And the Bible does turn around and tell us that it was an abomination to have one set of weights for buying and one set of weights for selling.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's a good way to get cheated.
But
maybe you should bring your own sets of weights.
We hear a lot of people talking about going to precious metals again today, gold and silver. So we're going back to the currency of antiquity, really, and having to do that in our own day. Gold and silver still holds its value and still has great value for people and significance. So things haven't changed much. We seem to be going back in history.
And that's right, because in our country, not too long ago, I think it probably ended in the early 1960s or late 1950s. We were on the gold standard, so you could have a gold certificate, or you could have paper money, which was which had certain colors to it, which represented a silver certificate. So it's backed by actual gold and silver in the U.S. Treasury. And now we have what is called legal tender, which we're not going to get into that, but maybe it's just because of the currency is fragile. It's tender.
We're finding, I think, in our modern day, a bit of a morphing now into some new currency with Bitcoin and all this kind of thing. But in the ancient
oh my
times,
gosh, I can't wrap my head
times,
around Bitcoin.
I can't either. But in the ancient times, they had these weights, and you just weighed things out. And so you went to the market, you got your wheat, your barley, you put them on the scales, and then you would put your weights on the scale and pay in so much currency. And in fact, wheat and barley became currency in a lot of respects. So they paid in kind. So you got a goat skin for so many, pounds of barley.
But the kind of what was the parable, the message written on the wall? Remember the message written on the wall? You have been weighed and found wanting, placed in the balance. And yes. It kind of puts you into the frame of mind of the ancient people when they're talking about what do they mean by, like you've been weighed, because they're using weights and you're putting a balance. Now to us, we probably have that image of the justice system where the justice system is supposed to be blind. It's supposed to be that's off the subject. But anyway,
or the Egyptian picture, the Egyptian
What's
photograph,
that?
the Egyptian photograph that we have, the picture of the weighing of the heart.
Oh yes,
scene of judgment.
There you go.
The Book of the Dead.
The Book of the Dead.
The two scales and the weigh your heart, if you're a good heart or a bad heart, and then of course. So again, that imagery of the scales and weighing and being weighed in the balance was a common one in antiquity.
Yes, it was weighed next to a feather, and if it didn't balance out, you were eaten by a crocodile.
That's right.
And you're gone. There was no heaven and hell. You were just gone in Egyptian mythology. But anyway, yes. This has been fascinating. Always a lot of fun. I don't have any artifacts kind of to share I was getting ready to screw up and say Persian period. So Assyrians, which at this time is Iron Age 2.
Do you have
Iron Age pottery?
Do you have Iron Age pottery?
No, I don't have any weights. I don't have any dome weights, and they went to museums.
Yes.
It took me a while, and I collected the dome weights, and I'll put in an edited picture. Let me write this down, dome weight.
Yes, good idea.
And so people know what we're talking about, because during the Iron Age, they used limestone weights, and there'd be inscriptions on them designating the weight, the amount of the weight. Okay. But during the Roman period, they were using weights that kind of looked like hockey puck. And they'd have inscriptions on those that actually would tell what that weight should be. This is an interesting one because in collecting weights for museums, I was always trying to collect the weights with the inscriptions because they got both. Ones with inscriptions because not everybody was literate. A lot of people weren't. So why put an inscription on it? Because they wouldn't know. So the majority of them don't have inscriptions on them, but the rare ones do. And the idea is to collect a good set, small, because of like the Netzif and the really tiny one, work your way up. And I was trying to collect them for a museum. I got a number of them done. But anyway, going back to the Roman period with weights, in the biblical narrative talks about two different sets of weights and don't cheat people. Well, this one was actually a weight that was painted. It was stained red. But because it's 2,000 years old, some of that stain is worn off. And you can see where they actually placed lead inside this limestone weight. So there you go. They were cheating. They were cheating. Now, it gives, you could say, brings into remembrance where Jesus turned over the table of the money changers, called it like a den of thieves. And I'm sure all this stuff did happen. It even happens today. You just got to be careful.
Yeah. You got to be careful where you exchange your money. Somebody
right?
will take advantage.
Let me see if I got anything in here I could share.
Well, it was interesting to see the weights that we had from Shalmaneser that had a little bit of a hoop on them. They could be picked up or hung, and in the shape of a lion. So yes. 3 little lions. So I thought that was those were really good examples of the weights.
But it's something, of course, that's extremely common and easily identified in a period, whether to say it's going to be Middle Bronze Age, Late Bronze Age, Iron Age 1, Iron Age 2, are the lamps, right? And I think I showed this before, but we call these shell-shaped lamps. And you can see it's nothing more than like a small bowl that was spun on a potter's wheel. Then they gave it a rim and kind of pinched it down. And then another pinch in one area of the bowl while the clay is kind of like leather hard. Mm-hmm. And you get the spout.
And you have
now here you can see where it's actually burned in antiquity. I don't know if people can see that darkness right there.
Yeah. Put a wick in that.
So that's really cool. Now, such as in the book Ruth Amaran. If you can't, they're kind of getting rare and rare to find. I think I got 3 copies, just in case I lose one, right? But anyway, some have noted. Now, this would be those that were active archaeologists in the field. Like I said, I just worked with museums. They said that there is like a what we call a full base, a thick base, and then we got a modified base, which is a smaller base. And they designated those to represent different areas. Like the full bases were found basically up north, such as in Israel. Now, remember, after Solomon, the tribes were divided. So Israel's up north and Judah's in the south. So the full bases were from Israel in the north, and the modified bases, which are smaller, were from the south, according to, some speculations. So this one actually has a pretty thick base. So this could probably be from the Northern Territory. So the time of Iron Age, Iron Age 2, right? Possibly the time period, it's very general, time period of your Assyrians that you're talking about. And there we have, what's interesting, I know I'm going off subject. We're going off subject, but it's fun stuff, right? And for years, for millennia. Go ahead.
We always go off topic.
That's what ball-headed guys do, This is like a lot of, they just got space up here. And for years, oil lamps, whether they were shell-shaped, were actually had a like a convex bottom. They were rounded, so they rocked, right? And you'll find these from 2000 BC, even before.
Yeah, I have one of those.
So that's 4,000 years ago, all the way up. You see, late Bronze Age to the beginning of the Iron Age. So here we have, whatever you want to say, Iron Age 1 is 1,000 BC. So 1,000 years of having a round base and is rocking back and forth. And then somebody has this epiphany saying, you know what, we're losing oil. This thing rocks back and forth. We're losing oil. What can we do to make it stable? You know, just like we do in our coffee cups, right? I get right there. It's like it's got a base to it. You make it flat, right? And now it's stable. It took 1,000 years to figure that one out. That's just wonderful, isn't it?
Well, what's worse is if it rolls over and burns your house down.
That would be terrible, yeah.
So they got a brainer that they put a flat bottom on it. It was more stable, and their house didn't burn down. So
yeah,
they got an epiphany.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Look, honey, this one's got a flat base.
That's right.
Look, they probably thought so. This one's dysfunctional. It don't rock.
Yeah, this one don't fall over.
They're supposed to rock it. Lamps rock. But anyway, fun stuff. But we do have evidence of also literacy because we find, writing on the jar handles.
Yep.
To identify possibly by what authority, who owns the merchandise. And we have both the Paleo-Hebrew and also we have the cuneiform, which, of course, Assyrians are not going to work. I shouldn't say they're not going to write in Paleo-Hebrew. Maybe they did as correspondence, but their language is going to be cuneiform. This was big and bold so everybody can see it. Now, if you get to an actual cuneiform tablet, let me share this with you because I borrowed these from the Museum of History and Biblical Archaeology. So I'm giving them credit because I borrowed it. This is a cuneiform tablet, and you can see, there can be rough, and you can see how small. I bet you can't even see it because it's very tiny, very, very tiny.
You need to put
I get you another tablet here.
Camera.
I borrowed a number of them. See this one. You can barely see it. I have to hold it next to me. And maybe you can see a little bit on this side.
Yeah.
Right here. Now, what they don't see, it's just like sending a letter. You don't just send, when I say send a letter, you're not just sending the written form, the sheet of paper. You put it inside an envelope. And these tablets were placed inside a cover, an envelope of another cover of clay. So what happens is that envelope has broken away, and this is the clay tablet inside. That's the way they did it in, you could say, Mesopotamia, where the Assyrians were from.
And we know that because we have discovered some that were still in their envelopes. Right.
But because sometimes things were done very hastily, you could say the common documents that they probably had, which we have libraries like from Maori, which have tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets discovered, right? I'm going to say the envelope that was placed over the tablet, well, they didn't give it enough time to dry. So you can see this one right here is actually adhered to the tablet. See how smooth it is? That's part of the envelope that covered it, but it's adhered to the tablet. So that happens too.
And like today, when someone opens up their letter, they throw the envelope away and they keep the letter. So they would destroy or discard the covering.
There you go. Am I holding it the right way? It's got to be facing something like that. Okay, and then Paleo Hebrew. Now this is a museum copy. Like I said, I borrowed some items from the Museum of History and Biblical Archaeology because I'm doing different advertisements. And this is Paleo Hebrew on a small pomegranate, and I don't know if people can see it.
Can
you see that at all? It's right on the rim right here, or what we might call the shoulder.
And I have a copy of the pomegranate in my coloring book for the children if they wanted to color it. It's always fun. Or adults if they are interested in doing some coloring. My wife said, I'm going to do some of those. She likes to do painting, and anybody that likes to doodle, they're perfect for that. Get your colored pencils out and you can doodle.
Well, it's kind of like this for kids because it says from 4 to what? 4 to 14 or 4 to 11? What does your book say?
Well, it says 4 to 14, but you know, some young adults can do
young
it.
Adults? It just eliminated me.
Young at heart.
So it's coloring books for kids. It is therapy for adults.
Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes
I need to chill.
Yeah. Sometimes I thought coloring books were more for adults and just an excuse to doodle with their kids.
Right.
Nonetheless,
but it is
a fun activity.
It's not just coloring; it's educational.
Oh yes, it's got facts in it, written for 6-year-olds and up, so that they can understand about the artifacts. They can learn. Good for homeschoolers that are doing education for the time period. Archaeology. It's just a great activity for all ages.
It's a sneaky way to get kids to learn.
And I haven't seen any other out there, so it's a very unique item.
That's the good thing, is when you come out with this novelty idea and you don't see anything out there to take its place.
I love to do artwork. I do dry brush watercolor myself as a hobby and for therapy. And it combines my love for archaeology with my love of, I love doing pen, or you draw everything out in like India ink, and then you do a watercolor wash over top. So this gives everybody an opportunity to do the watercolor part, or crayons, or a color pencil, or pastels, or whatever medium you like to work with, and have a great project with your children, and it's educational at the same time. They can learn about archaeology. So turn off the computers, put down the cell phones, turn the TV off, and do what I used to do growing up. Do a little coloring.
And that's true. Something else they can do, not just is if they want to see how it actually looked, which most of them will be probably earth toned if it's an artifact, but you could actually Google them and find out how they looked, how they appear in museums.
Yes.
And draw it according to that, or just make your own design.
I like the image behind you. Many things were painted in bright colors, like those capitals on those pillars you have there. The Egyptians used bright colors. The carnelian red, lapis lazuli blue. They had the yellow, and so they had these primary colors that they were painting their tombs with. So things weren't as monochrome and as sort of sandstone color as we think and like to think they are today when we looked at them in a museum. And we know that because we found pigment on them. We found the different pigments. There's an actual watercolor palette they've discovered with the ochre for the yellow, and all the different colors, the red, the yellow, and the lapis lazuli blue. So we've been able to determine the formula of the colors that they've used in Egypt. So a good way to practice making things nice and bright and colorful using the color book.
Right. I do have some Egyptian artifacts in here, but that's okay. We understand color, and I didn't mean to be rude again, but I'm sitting here at the showcase when you're talking about how the Egyptians added color, and that's very true because for years I thought the hieroglyphs themselves
Yes.
was enough work. I couldn't imagine doing all that and then painting over top of it. But that's true, they did. And to think about it, you look at all these, the hieroglyphs that are on, usually they're temples, right? And they would paint over top of that as well. And like you said, they still have the colors, the stain or whatever was still on some of it. So they know actually how to identify how it looked. But you can get this stuff on the web. We'll show you how it actually looked in the ancient world. Very, very colorful.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you go to a big city and you see this huge mural on the side of a wall of a huge building, and they're just fantastic. You can imagine going into Egypt in a place which we would call Luxor or ancient Thebes, and these buildings would all be painted. And you look at these huge columns you can't even reach around, and all those would be painted. And that would just be amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah. Full of color, bright color. So the coloring book
We
is
ended up in Egypt and we started with the Assyrians. This is confusing.
Well, remember, Shalmaneser wanted loyalty of the Israelites, but they ended up going down to Egypt looking for their help.
Right.
So there's a connection here with Egypt in the biblical narrative. And we already dealt with So or Asakon, one of the Egyptian pharaohs, is mentioned in the Bible. And so there was a relationship between Israel and the Egyptians. They were looking to them for help, for protection against the Assyrians. And so their histories are intertwined together.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a good point, because when we think about the Egyptians, we just look at the period of the Exodus and we think they were always the enemy. They were always the foe. But when you get to the time period of, let's say, Solomon, he actually marries, according to the biblical narrative, the Pharaoh's daughter and builds her a house next to his palace. And as a dowry, what was the dowry? The Pharaoh gave Solomon Gezer. I think that's how it went.
Yeah. And of course, Moses lived there and was educated under the Egyptians and brought back much of the wisdom that he had learned and passed that on to Joshua and to the Israelites. So they've had a big influence on the people who live there.
And this is, of course, the Assyrian period where they're attacking the northern confederacy of tribes, which we call Israel, right? But later on in the 6th century, that's when the Babylonians show up and they're laying siege to Jerusalem and other city-states along the way, right?
And remember, the capital of Israel at the time is Samaria. It's not Jerusalem.
Right. Right. I think, people get confused because they think it's all they look at a map and think maybe it's one great big,
that's right. Because there's the northern and southern kingdom.
Nation. Yeah. Because it was divided and it becomes very separated.
And so that's why Samaria is the focal point in this biblical passage, in this biblical narrative, and that's why Shalmaneser comes and besieges Samaria. That's the capital of Israel at this time period. So we need to remember that, and that's why Samaria falls and the northern kingdom falls of Israel up in the north.
Right. And we don't have the siege of Jerusalem until the time period of Sennacherib.
That's right.
So yeah, it kind of gets a little confusing, but I think people get it. You showed a map, so people, if you want to go back, reverse it, look at this little map. It shows you the Assyrian kings and when they were down in Israel,
placing things in their proper. And again, it's not what would we say? It's not accurate in terms of mathematical accuracy. So don't take a ruler and trying to figure it all out. This is to give people an idea of where things were situated, and you can move them over a little bit here and there. So I didn't use an exact ruler, although it's pretty close. But
Right. Well,
some of the dates vary and can be pushed one way or the other by a year, depending whether it's the ascension reign or the which particular way you do your dating. But we know these dates pretty accurately from this time period, and they're a good guide, putting things in perspective for people. Who comes before who and who came after who, and where you put them on a timeline. So they're used for educational purposes.
right. Well, Doctor, thank you for your time. And everybody, thank you for listening. I appreciate your attentiveness to the program. And Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down, sponsored by Bible Interact. We are now at like 134,000 subscribers. And thank you very much for all you that subscribed. We're looking forward to next year coming up and we're setting it up where we're trying to have, you could say, move into museums and get permission to borrow their artifacts like I did already, and give you a heads up to go into what we're going to call the museum vaults and look at their very rare, unique items from the Near East and put it into their time sequence and also their cultural reference and where it would assimilate with the biblical narrative. So stay tuned. That's going to be something that's going to be really, really fun and fascinating. I don't know any other programs that do that go into the museums and pull out artifacts and show it to the general public. And if I can, of course, yeah, it'll be lots of fun. And where I can, I want to see if the curators have time to actually pull the artifacts out and give the reference themselves. So it's not always going to be me. It'll be the actual curators from the museums. I know Carl Morgan, he's a little bit shy. He goes, "Oh, I don't know about being on Zoom." I said, "Well, if you got an assistant, then that's fine too. It's not hard." And he's got a nice museum in California going on. It's attachment to their church. And I'm sure they would, they already said that they would like to do this. Also, we got Trinity Southwest and Veritas here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Dean Gary Byers, he already said that he would be very interested in doing this as well. And then we have another museum that's going to open up. They have the artifacts and they're revamping the space. It used to be another business, and now they got to design it inside according to, okay, you could say their needs. But we still have access to their artifacts. So actually, we got 3 museums lined up, and this is going to be a lot of fun for this upcoming year. Everybody, thank you for your time and attentiveness. And Doctor, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're all welcome. Great to be
Everybody
with you.
have a great day.